So this is the situation. We talk about something called network society. Being next to the speaker is not a good idea with the mic, right? Network society, everything that can use a connection will get connected. And when that happens, the world literally changes, right? People heard about the project where MIT started tracking garbage. That's interesting. Yeah? You start to get a feel for what happens when you put sensors on stuff as mundane as garbage. Where do cell phones go? Cell phones that get recycled. Well, we found out 2 destinations. One is deep in Texas and another one is somewhere in Europe. But it's so fascinating when you can network things. Different kind of things to happen. And we believe that education, healthcare, transportation, everything is getting networked. And the impact on society is just fundamental when that happens. But as it happens, it impacts everything in between. The cloud, the network, the software, the hardware, everything. And where that goes is a variety of services, contemporary services, are now being delivered from the cloud. Call it private, call it public, call it hybrid, whatever. Contemporary services, consumer and enterprise, coming delivered from the cloud. And this then is continuously increasing on all sides of the equation. You can look at the device, you can look at the network in between, you can look at the computing power in the data center, and the speed at which all this is operating at, continuously increasing. I mean, the latest iPad, how many people know what kind of processor it has? Everybody talks about the Retina display. But there is a quad-core processor inside that is driving the graphics. That is invisible innovation that is just happening in the back end. But that is driven from this, continuous increase in processing power. And this, we have talked about this all day. All this technology mumbo-jumbo is good. But at the end of the day, we are talking about economics. The money has to come through. And this is new thinking in terms of business models, etc. And we think that leads us to this network-enabled cloud, where we've got the network, similar to what Pat talked about. And let's get into some of these details here. We think about this network-enabled cloud using 5 C's. We start with compute, which is traditional. Everybody talks about cloud computing, very important. Connectivity, like you pointed out, is at the heart of this. If you don't have connectivity, all you have is a bunch of servers and a bunch of devices not knowing how to talk to each other. These are 2 important things. But then control comes on top of that. Very, very important. Not just the ability to activate computing environments as needed, but the ability to connect the connectivity part and the computing part and control it together. The third barrier, in the top 3 barriers, one of them was SLAs. You've got to be able to deliver to an SLA, and that is where the control mechanism comes in. And at the end of the day, telco monetization, asset monetization is important, and that is where the creation comes in. If you can get different kinds of assets exposed to different consumers of the network society, that part starts to get very, very interesting. And then, of course, everybody wants to be able to customize, but they want low cost, so you have to have a customized C in there, just so that we offer that option. These are the 5 C's that we talk about. Computing, connect, the control part, creation, and customize. So let's talk about this in simple terms. Like you said, the connectivity is important. You got to have that. You got users on one side, you got the data center on the other side. Fascinating. You got to get the control mechanisms in place. But when it starts to get interesting is when you can get the compute environment in some sense distributed and out of the data center. Because like you said, there is so much intelligence out inside the network. You know, we talked about this quad-core processor inside the iPad. We put out base stations, and we put out hundreds of thousands of base stations, radio base stations every year. In the latest base station that we put out, the RBS 6000, one board, we've got 64 kernels running on that, one board. And we have the capacity to put 20 such boards in one base station. The amount of computing power that we are putting out there on the network is just incredible. Today we are processing in real-time voice and high-speed data connections. Tomorrow we could be activating different kinds of things on that computing power. And that is how we need to start to think, because it is not always efficient to send everything back into the core and bring it back. So creation, exposing network assets as much as possible, activating that on demand using the control mechanisms, everything starts to provide an opportunity. And what we think is that when all of this happens, you really start to realize the network-enabled cloud, because the network and the cloud are no longer different. They're working in a symbiotic fashion. And the network is enabling cloud services to be delivered in the best way possible. And of course, you have to build business on top of this, which is where you provide software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, etc. So to summarize here, the 5 C's. If you start with the connect, and you talked about mobility traffic. We talk about 24/7 connectivity. It's 24/7 by anywhere. That's really where access is, connectivity is. People want it everywhere. That's the demand on the connectivity side now. And then, of course, the quality and the experience is super important when it comes to connectivity. From a computing perspective, while availability was also listed as one of the top 3 barriers, the telcos have a rich history in delivering fantastic availability. And to enable distributed clouds based on that availability, that combination is pretty compelling. So computing takes a new meaning when you start to distribute that functionality. Control, delivering to SLAs, not just on computing capacity, but compute and network combined. So if you are a telco now and you're just delivering pipes and you deliver PSTN lines as well, think of combining all of those and delivering everything based on an SLA. Unified Communications as a Service is a good example. Bundle it along with a pipe. You could probably do a lot more along with it. The ability to create, of course, healthcare could use basic communication services as capabilities built into their systems, just as one example. There is a lot more that we can do when we enable network capabilities. And then the ability to customize it to whatever we want. A hybrid cloud infrastructure, on-premise, combination, so on and so forth. So our network-enabled cloud built on these 5 C's is what we think makes it very, very interesting. Thank you.